blockbuster trade just went down. DeMar DeRozan is headed to the Sacramento Kings in a sign-and-trade deal. I'm going to grade the deal with all three teams involved in the trade, with the Spurs, Bulls, and of course the Sacramento Kings. But before I get into that, I want to remind y'all to like and subscribe if y'all enjoy content like this, where it's reactionary. When a trade goes down, I'll make a video on it, and also predictions and just other random videos. If you like them, hit the like button and subscribe button down below. It is greatly appreciated and does a ton for the channel. So let's jump straight into a full trade summary for each team. The Sacramento Kings received, of course, DeMar DeRozan in a sign-and-trade, where he signed with them on a $76 million deal, which is 3 years. And of course, the Kings got DeRozan from the Chicago Bulls, and the Bulls in this deal received Chris Duarte via the Kings and 2 second-round picks, which I'm guessing are from the San Antonio Spurs. The Bulls also got some cash, don't know how much it is, but they got some cash in this deal. And the Spurs in this deal received Harrison Barnes and a unprotected 2031 pick swap via the Sacramento Kings. So you might be asking why this was a 3-team deal. Why didn't the Chicago Bulls and Sacramento Kings just make a straight up deal, like the Bulls get Harrison Barnes or something? From the reports I've heard coming out of this is the Chicago Bulls didn't want to pick up much money in this deal, so they needed a third team to come into this deal and take the money the Kings needed to give up to get DeMar DeRozan. So that was either going to be Kevin Huerter or Harrison Barnes from my understanding. And so the Spurs came in, who had already freed up money by releasing Devontae Graham, not picking Rob Dillingham in the draft, which saved them a little bit of money, and just some other small moves that allowed them to take on a bigger contract. And that contract is now Harrison Barnes. And they got Harrison Barnes because, for one, I think they still wanted him. I think they think he can be a decent piece on their team. And for two, the Bulls didn't want to take on his contract or Kevin Huerter's contract. So the Spurs came in and did it for them. I'm guessing the Bulls didn't want to do it so they can focus on their younger pieces and not have a guy like Harrison Barnes, who still has 2 years on his contract, and take away minutes from some of their younger guys. So I'm going to cover the Sacramento Kings first, and they obviously got the best player in this deal with DeMar DeRozan, who's on a decent contract now. It's 3 years, $76 million. Compared to what other players are getting in this offseason, I think it's a pretty decent deal. It was spread it equally. It's around $25 million a year. For DeMar DeRozan, I think that's pretty decent. And for the Sacramento Kings, they essentially gave up Harrison Barnes, who was okay for them last year, but they definitely needed an upgrade in that forward position, and Chris Duarte, and a pick swap for a third star alongside De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. Their current projected lineup right now is De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, who they just re-signed, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, and Domantas Sabonis. And off the bench, Kevin Huerter, Keon Ellis, and Devin Carter, who they just drafted. And speaking of Devin Carter, he just tweeted out, I just saw it before recording this video, something about his full circle, and I'm guessing this is talking about how his dad, Anthony Carter, actually played with DeMar DeRozan in the 2012 season, I believe, and that was actually Anthony Carter's last year in the league, and that was around DeMar DeRozan's first couple seasons. So DeRozan is now playing with the son of one of his former teammates about over a decade ago at this point. So that's just a pretty cool fact that I found out right before recording this, actually. So the fit with DeMar DeRozan on this team is definitely not a perfect fit. Obviously, DeMar DeRozan can't shoot the 3-ball very well. Neither can Domantas Sabonis. De'Aaron Fox has gotten a little bit better at that. So the 5-man lineup is a little bit weird with the 3-point shot. They only really got 2 very good shooters with Malik Monk and Keegan Murray. But if De'Aaron Fox does progressively get better at his 3-point shot, which he has been doing, I don't think the shooting is going to be that big of a problem on this lineup. So I'm not too worried about the shooting with this lineup, but something I am worried about is their defense. None of these guys are really standout defenders. Harrison Barnes was maybe their best defender on the starting lineup, and he's gone now. De'Aaron Fox is not that bad. He gets in passing lanes and stuff, but as a one-on-one defender, Harrison Barnes was maybe their best guy there, and they now traded him, and DeMar DeRozan is not at all a good defender. But the defense of this lineup is definitely a little bit off, but the offense is going to be incredible. Like, this might be a top 5 offense in the league with guys like Fox and DeRozan, who are some of the clutchest players in the league, and also some of the best ISO players in the league. Now, speaking of De'Aaron Fox and DeMar DeRozan and how their play styles will fit each other, I don't think it's going to be as bad as some people might think. I don't think De'Aaron Fox is that awful off ball, and DeMar DeRozan, I think he can work on it a little bit, but he's not also terrible off ball, like some people might think. He was playing off of guys like Zach LaVine and Vucevic a little bit. So I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue playing alongside a guy like De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. It'll definitely take some adjusting, but I do think De'Aaron Fox and DeMar DeRozan can definitely fit alongside each other on this team. But DeRozan adds another offensive weapon and a guy that you can go to in the clutch if a guy like De'Aaron Fox is getting double teamed or something, and vice versa. If DeRozan is getting double teamed, passes out to De'Aaron Fox, he can definitely make a play out of it. And they got Malik Monk and Keegan Murray out there, elite shooters, and Domantas Sabonis, he can just be an offensive hub if they need him to be. And I think just DeMar DeRozan in that third star role can be pretty good in his career. He doesn't need to be the best option, the best player every single night for them to win a game. And we haven't really seen him in that role for quite a bit. I think on the Bulls, he was pretty much the best player throughout his tenure there. And with the Spurs, I think he was the best player there. And with the Raptors, I think he'd be the best player there until early on in his career. So it'll be interesting to see him take a true step backwards in his role and let a guy like De'Aaron Fox be the main guy, or maybe Sabonis on some nights. But defense is definitely my number one worry about this starting five, especially when it comes into the playoffs, where the starting five is going to have to play more, and more of a load is also going to be on them defensively, so they're going to have to do more. And this lineup does not scream defense, but it also does scream great offense. So regular season wise, I can definitely see them being one of the best offenses in the league. And in my opinion, this lineup doesn't make them a contender, but I do think it does make him a playoff lock. Like a guy like DeRozan on this team makes them a great offense, and I think their defense on their bench is good enough where they can, sub in some guys and that'll help them. But in the playoffs, when they won't be able to do that, they'll need to focus more on their starting five. I do think that defense will hurt them. So to give a grade on this deal for the Sacramento Kings, I'm going to give it a B+, just under an A-. I think the fit is definitely going to take a little bit of adjusting, and come playoff time, I'm not sure if this lineup is going to be as good as some people might think. But I do think the Kings definitely needed to make a deal. Coming out of last year, they did not make the playoffs, and a lot of questions were up in the air with what deals they need to make. And they got a third star on their team. Now, more stars doesn't mean, more wins or a finals appearance or something. But I do think it's going to add some wins to this team for sure, and I think does make them a playoff lock. So it'll be interesting to see this team for sure. A great offense is definitely going to come out of this team. So I give it a B+ for the Kings. Next up is the San Antonio Spurs, who got in this deal to get Harrison Barnes and an unprotected pick swap, and they only gave up 2 second-round picks from my understanding. I say that because I never saw on Woj's tweet or Shams' tweet or anyone's tweets if the second-round picks were actually from the Spurs. I'm just assuming they are, because none of the other stuff is from the Spurs, like, know for a fact, unless it's some cash that they gave up. But I'm guessing the second-round picks were from the Spurs. And even if they gave up the 2 second-round picks, I think what they got in return was great for that value. The Spurs have been freeing up a bunch of money for this exact deal, and I really do like this for them. They just signed CP3, who's obviously a veteran. He's near 40 years old. But they also got another veteran in Harrison Barnes, who you can put out there with a really young team. Last year, they were the youngest team in the league. Now they're coming into this year with veterans like CP3, Harrison Barnes. And I just think that's a perfect way to approach a young team. I don't think you just throw them out there and expect them to fully develop over years and years into a contending team. I do think they need some veteran presence in that locker room at times. And after last year, where they did just throw out a young team and, hope for the best, I think coming into next year, this is exactly what they needed to do, and I think they've had a great offseason so far. The projected lineup for San Antonio next year is looking like CP3 at the 1, Vassell at the 2, Harrison Barnes at the 3, Sohan at the 4, and then of course Wemby at the 5. And off the bench, they still got Keldon Johnson, Trey Jones, and Stephon Castle, who just looked really good in the Summer League debut. Like I said, I think the Spurs have had a phenomenal offseason, and this just adds to it. Harrison Barnes can come in, start right away, and just bring some defense on the perimeter to help a guy like Wemby and even Stephon Castle when they're getting minutes together, and make them a pretty decent defense in my opinion, after coming off a pretty below average defensive year. Barnes can also come in and just knock a couple shots down. He shot, I think, around 36% from 3 last year. Of course, he's not the most consistent player offensively out there, but if he can just have like maybe 2 or 3 games in a 6-game stretch of 15 points or 20 points or something, that's a big time for a team who just had almost no help for Wemby last year. And a guy like Harrison Barnes obviously didn't look great for the Sacramento Kings last year. He had some moments where he was just, non-existent offensively, but he can come in and be like the fourth offensive option and not have that much pressure on him, with guys like Wemby taking shots, CP3 being a main ball handler, and Devin Vassell also being a main shot creator. He's also on a pretty decent contract. I think it's around $19 million next year and then $18 million the year after, and he has 2 years left on the deal. And I think that's just a perfect amount of years, so you can come in and be a veteran, and then in 2 years maybe go to a contending team after showing your worth on a team like the Spurs. Now, somehow also the Spurs were able to get a unprotected pick swap from 2031 via the Sacramento Kings. Now, we have zero idea how good or bad the Kings will be by 2031, and I think that is a great pickup for the Spurs in this deal, where they were going to pick up a decently sized contract for the Chicago Bulls so they can trade DeRozan away and for the Kings to acquire DeRozan, but they also were able to walk away with a pretty good pick in my opinion. Now, whether they use that pick or not, or they use it in a trade or actually draft someone, who knows, but I think just acquiring that in a trade is just great value for a potential trade, or if you actually do want to use that pick around 7 years from now. Now, if I'm grading this deal for the Spurs, I might be being biased as a Spurs fan myself. I'm trying not to be biased, but I do think this is an A grade for me for this trade for the Spurs. They basically gave up nothing to acquire a solid role player who can come along, play defense, and knock down some shots alongside Wemby, Chris Paul, Devin Vassell, and all those guys. And also a decent pick swap that'll be in 2031 that they can use in a trade for a potential star to pair alongside Wemby, or if they just want to use that, like I said. They obviously didn't walk away with the best player in the deal, but for what they gave up and what they got back, I love the deal for the Spurs. Lastly is the Chicago Bulls, who walk away with Chris Duarte and 2 second-round picks, and also Demar DeRozan off the roster after around, I think, 2-3 years with them. Now, for me personally, I really do like this deal, and it's not even fully because of, I think Chris Duarte is going to come in and average 20. I just think I like the direction the Bulls are going in, finally trading DeMar DeRozan, and hopefully finally hitting that rebuild button. We still don't know if they're going to trade Lonzo, Vucevic, and Levine and go full rebuild, or they're going to, retool and not fully rebuild. But if I am going to predict what's going to happen, I do think they are going to hit the full rebuild. Next year, their pick is owned by the Spurs and is top 10 protected, and in that stacked draft class, I think they're going to want that draft pick for sure. I can see them going full rebuild, and this is a perfect way to do it. Just get rid of their veteran guys and get something in return, like some second round picks and a decent young guy who can shoot the ball a little bit around your young pieces already. There's not too much to talk about with the Bulls without knowing, what their next move is going to be. But if they do hit the full rebuild, like I said, I do really like this for them. With how second round picks are traded nowadays, they might be able to trade something decent for those second round picks, or if they just want to use them since they're hopefully going to rebuild. So to grade this for the Chicago Bulls, I'm going to give it a B-. They didn't get too much in the deal, but without knowing what the next move is, like I said, it's hard to grade a deal like this. So I'm going to go a B-, kind of in the middle. I like it enough, but it's also not like an incredible deal. Like, they didn't get a great pick or a great young player for DeMar DeRozan. Now, he was a free agent, so they didn't have too much leverage in this deal, but I'm just glad they got rid of him finally and got something out of him, and hopefully this is a sign for a rebuild for Chicago. So if you guys like this video, hit the subscribe button down below and the notification bell so you can be notified as soon as I upload my reactions, breakdowns, etc. with this off season, and also when next season starts up, you'll get all the videos from me. So turn on that notification bell so you can be notified as soon as I upload. And I hope you guys like this video, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Peace out.